Okay, we are live. Let's just give the stream a second here to make sure that everything is stable and secure across the YouTube platform. Make sure that this stream does not drop up on us. Welcome in, everybody, to this Denver Broncos Syndicate live stream post day one of training camp. Although technically it is day 3 of training camp, this is the first day that the general public was allowed out there to observe training camp, and it is listed on the schedule as day 1 of training camp, so some can call it day 3 of training camp, some can call it day 1 of training camp, whatever you want to call it. It was the first day that fans were allowed out there at Centura Health Training Center to get a look at the Denver Broncos with our own 2 eyes. We got to see just how different these practices are structured under Sean Payton, from orientation of the field to honestly kind of limit what fans can see, to overall just the tempo and the overall structure of the practices. All those different subtleties we will get into. Let's go ahead and say hi. We've got Ray Haas in the house, even engaged. Thank you for suffering that through that hellish sun to keep us all up to date. Absolutely, absolutely. The good news is off to the side of the fan berm, they've got like some trees that they planted a couple of years ago that are finally starting to provide some shade. So that's where I generally go over there and get some shade away from that hot Colorado sun. It really does help a lot. Also, hat, sunscreen, hydration, all that good stuff. You've got to stay prepared out there because it is absolutely brutal at times. Alright guys, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into some observations that we saw during day 1 of training camp. But before we do that, guys, just a couple of housekeeping matters. If you could just do me a favor and leave a like on this stream, it really does help us out. It helps push the stream out. It helps tell YouTube to show this channel to more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. And I cannot even begin to express how much it helps us out. So if you could just leave a like on the stream, that would be absolutely awesome. So, the first thing that you notice is something that I already alluded to, and there was a much greater sense of urgency, structure, discipline. The practice actually had meaning to it instead of Nathaniel Hackett's cupcake camp, which had basically no structure and was basically just whatever Nathaniel Hackett felt like doing on that particular day. In this, there was meaning and method to everything, every single rep and drill that was done during camp today. We've got Diana Aragon in the house saying, I always think of Russell Wilson as my quarterback no matter what, even though he has been given a bad rap. Thank you, Russell. Absolutely. And Russell Wilson, there's still plenty of support for Russell Wilson out there at Centura Health Training Center. I saw plenty of number 3 jerseys. A big loud roar of chants came out when Russell Wilson took the field, so there's plenty of fan support behind Russell Wilson, despite what the media may want you to believe. But going back to the overall structure and tempo of the practices, we did not see anybody just dragging around and looking with no sense of urgency. We saw everybody almost looking like it was a military type practice out there, and you could see Sean Payton had an absolute command of everything. He walked around strutting his stuff, and you could tell he was the guy who ran that show. The Broncos started off with some early team drills before they jumped immediately into stretching. They did do a really short stretch period, in my opinion, before they jumped in to some individual drills and then 7-on-7s, which is something that we have not seen since really Vance Joseph. Vic Fangio did a little bit of 7-on-7s, but not to the extent that Sean Payton did in his first official training camp practice with the Denver Broncos. And that's something that we're going to see a lot throughout these periods, and it's going to help iron out some of the kinks and some of the rust that this team has had over the past few weeks. And don't get me wrong, there was some rust out there that I observed, and we're going to talk about that. Russell Wilson, in my opinion, did not have his best day out there. He was a little bit indecisive at times in terms of deciding if he wanted to throw the football or if he wanted to pull the ball down and scramble. He did scramble several times, but in real game situations, a couple of them were in 7-on-7s. If those were 11-on-11 drills, they would have been sacks because right, he held onto the ball for at times 3, 4, 5 seconds, and you can't get away with doing that at a consistent basis at the NFL level. That was one of the reasons that Russell Wilson struggled so much last year. However, Sean Payton is going to do what he can to try to alleviate Russell Wilson holding on to the football by emphasizing the quick game. That's something that we definitely saw out at training camp today. This offense looked extremely similar to the offense that Sean Payton was running with Drew Brees in the final years of his career. It was one quick hitch, get the ball out, no time to have indecisiveness, quite frankly. It was on some of those longer developing concepts where we saw Russell Wilson somewhat struggle, and he would hold on to the football and he'd scramble in those situations in a regulated practice, but in an actual game situation, I feel like those plays would have been sacks. Zach Allen was in the backfield consistently, wreaking just absolute havoc back there, and he caused a lot of those pressures, and I feel like he would have gotten home on quite a few of them if they were real game situations. So Russell Wilson did do a lot of scrambling out there, which for some people that may be a good thing, but I was observing it as this is a good time for Russell Wilson to sort of see what he can and can't get away with in these practice periods. And that's why I want him to, if maybe squeeze a ball into double coverage just to see if he can maybe make that throw. Sean Payton talked about how he does want Russell Wilson to, if he has any indecisiveness at all about the play, to go out and scramble. So that may be something that Sean Payton is heavily emphasizing with Russ, but I see that philosophy a little bit differently, and I feel like Russell Wilson should really use this to see what he can and can't get away with on the field, basically. So overall, I feel like Russell Wilson could have had a bit of a better day. He had an ugly pick where he hung a ball up into double coverage, but he did have a couple of nice throws as well, a couple of deep connections. So as we get further and further into training camp, I really feel that Russell Wilson is going to get a lot more comfortable in Sean Payton's scheme. It's a complete 360 from what Nathaniel Hackett was having Russell Wilson operate, and it's a lot different, honestly, than what Russell Wilson has operated throughout his career in Seattle. Now, as far as the other quarterbacks on the Denver Broncos roster are concerned, Jarrett Stidham was highly disappointing today, in my opinion. He is somebody that was brought in on a high-end backup quarterback deal to potentially be an insurance policy for the team in case Russell Wilson does not perform up to the standard that Sean Payton needs him to perform. Unfortunately, the problem with Jarrett Stidham is that his arm talent, there's a clear disparity between Russell Wilson's arm talent and Jarrett Stidham's arm talent. Jarrett Stidham would flutter balls. He had some really, really tough deep balls at times, man. He had no velocity, no drive on the ball. I thought Jarrett Stidham looked like a third-string quarterback out there, and Ben DiNucci, who was brought in from the XFL, former Dallas Cowboys quarterback, looked like the better quarterback out there today. So that's something to monitor. The Broncos last season initially brought in Josh Johnson to be the primary backup to Russell Wilson, and Brett Rippon ended up shining him out and beat him out in training camp. I feel like we could see something potentially similar with Ben DiNucci and Jarrett Stidham, because Jarrett Stidham did not look like a top-paid backup quarterback out there. He looked like a third-string rookie with his indecisiveness, his overall lack of arm strength. At least with Russell Wilson, the indecisiveness was there, but he pushed the ball downfield, and you could just see the raw arm strength and raw arm talent has not disappeared whatsoever with Russell Wilson. With Jarrett Stidham, it's very concerning. We got David Johnston in the house saying Shelby Harris. Yep, the Broncos brought in Shelby Harris today for a workout. I want to make sure that he didn't sign since I've gotten live here. I just want to double check this, guys, because they did bring in Shelby Harris for a workout today. I dedicated that particular topic to its own separate video. Okay, good. It doesn't look like they've signed Shelby. Okay, because otherwise we'd have to go into video making mode. But yeah, Ray, it was pretty brutal, honestly, from Jarrett Stidham. I was highly disappointed in what I saw, especially considering he put some good stuff on tape in the Raiders with the Raiders last season. He had a game against the San Francisco 49ers in his first career start where he made some high caliber NFL throws. But today, we didn't see that. One thing I did notice with Sean Payton is he has changed up Jarrett Stidham's footwork. Jarrett Stidham used to operate in the shotgun with his right foot back. Now he operates with his left foot back, which is what all Sean Payton quarterbacks are trained to do. And that can mess things up in terms of your hitching, your timing on your drops, and your overall accuracy on your throws. So that's something that we could be seeing with Jarrett Stidham because he made a lot better throws in his stint with the Raiders than he did during training camp today. So that's something to definitely monitor. Meanwhile, we do have some news on some wide receivers today for the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos made a couple of transactions there. They signed former Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver Michael Bandy, and they ended up cutting former Cherry Creek wide receiver Nick Williams. Williams is somebody who's been on and off the roster twice now, and should the Broncos have another opening at wide receiver, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they brought him back. Bandy is somebody who spent time with the Chargers under Denver Broncos offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, so that's that connection there. Most recently, he was with Wade Phillips and the Houston Roughnecks down in the XFL. So he played well in the XFL and showcased enough on tape for the Denver Broncos to bring him in a pretty crowded wide receiver room to see if he can add some depth to that position. What's going on, Jess? Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you are doing well on this fine evening. We are just kind of waiting right now also to see if we get some more news on Shelby Harris. Given the Denver Broncos' struggles on the defensive line, I talked about that in my video today. I believe that the Denver Broncos really need to consider bringing Shelby Harris in. It would be a massive, massive move for them. But moving back into the wide receiver position, along with bringing in Michael Bandy, who was actually out there on punt return today, so that's possibly why the Denver Broncos brought him in. They could see him as a potential special teams weapon, and my camera is out of focus. I'm so sorry about that. Come back to me. Come back to me. Come back to me. There we go. Jeez. Come on. Yep. My little webcam does do this sometimes. Sorry about that, guys. Come on, focus. There we go. Okay, so in other wide receiver news, the Denver Broncos did activate Kendall Hinton off the PUP list, and he's somebody that in this crowded wide receiver room with guys such as Marquez Callaway and little Jordan Humphrey stepping up, Kendall Hinton is going to have to make a massive impact if he does want to make this team. And unfortunately, today did not start off very well for Kendall Hinton. He had a brutal drop on a slant route that Russell Wilson put right on the money. So with Kendall Hinton, he needs to do a lot better in terms of cleaning up those subtle mistakes in his game if he wants to find a spot on our practice squad. If not, then I fear that he's not going to make this team and he may have to find an opportunity somewhere else. Now, there are two wide receivers that I already alluded to that stood out big time, and those are two former New Orleans Saints wide receivers where you could see their familiarity in this offensive scheme, and that is Marquez Callaway and little Jordan Humphrey. Callaway had a couple of nice connections with Russell Wilson today, and little Jordan Humphrey, watch out for this training camp battle between little Jordan Humphrey and Riley Moss. Humphrey cooked Moss deep downfield on a little stutter go route, and it was a really well-placed ball, too, from Jarrett Stidham. And so with somebody like oh my God, I completely lost my train of thought. With somebody like little Jordan Humphrey, I would definitely keep an eye on him to potentially fill that last active roster spot for the Denver Broncos at wide receiver, if not the practice squad. He's very comfortable with the routes that he's being asked to run in the Sean Payton offense and seems to be just overall very comfortable with his role. So keep an eye on little Jordan Humphrey and Marquez Callaway as well. KJ was not around, unfortunately. He is still on the non-football injury list, so he has not taken the field yet. Once he gets active, he'll hopefully be acclimated in, but right now there is an unfortunate chance that KJ is going to miss a significant amount of training camp time, which absolutely sucks. However, there was a speedy wide receiver who was out there in Marvin Mims. Marvin was expected to miss the first part of training camp as he's dealing with a hamstring injury, but he was a participant today in 7-on-7 drills as well as individual drills. I don't believe I saw him participate in 11-on-11s, so they're maybe trying to work him back into camp slowly, but it definitely was good to see Marvin Mims back out there after Sean Payton said that he was going to be out for some time in training camp. And so that's it for the wide receiver observations. Moving into running backs, Javonte Williams did participate in 11-on-11 today's, 11-on-11s today, which is again another big step for him in his rehab and his recovery. So I was definitely pleased to see that. He had a couple of really, really nice cuts. He looks like he's starting to trust his knee out there. So keep an eye on Javonte Williams, man. The longer and longer that we go on, I feel like the fewer and fewer limitations he's going to have. Spelling him with the first team of offense was Samaje Perine, who looked solid. He only had a couple of carries today. The first team offense didn't get as much work in 11-on-11s. They did a little bit in walkthroughs before camp really got underway, and then they did a few 11-on-11 periods, but the second team and the third team got a lot more work in than the first team did. So with the second team, Tony Jones Jr. was the primary power runner. We saw a lot of different running styles today. We saw outside zone, we saw inside zone, we saw counter, we saw trap, guard pull, you name it, we saw it. And that's something that I've always really admired about Sean Payton, is his ability to mix up his run game. So in our power running sets, we saw a lot of Samaje Perine as well as Tony Jones Jr., who had a couple of really nice carries today. But the guy that I want you guys to keep an eye on is Jaleel McLaughlin, the undrafted free agent out of Youngstown State. We made a video about him yesterday. He stood out in the first couple of days of camp when it was just like walkthrough stuff. And now, when we're going at a little bit more of an elevated pace, Jaleel McLaughlin's speed is insane. He is one of the fastest players out there. I can't believe I'm saying this. He might even be faster than KJ Hamler. So the Denver Broncos need to find a way to use Jaleel McLaughlin, and he's not somebody that they can just sneak on the practice squad. He's too good of a player, and he's standing out. So I feel like Jaleel McLaughlin is an extremely strong candidate to make the active roster for the Denver Broncos. So that is something that I would definitely keep an eye on and monitor. Oh, geez. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to come back over here as well and just get back into my notes real quick. Another guy that I definitely wanted you to keep an eye on was Taylor Grimes, undrafted wide receiver as well, who was actually getting some work in with the first team due to some of our injuries at slot wide receiver. He's somebody who's speedy and shifty and almost reminds me of like a Julian Edelman or a Wes Welker a little bit. So he could be that sort of gadget guy, that joker on our offense. So I would definitely keep an eye on him as well, Taylor Grimes, the undrafted wide receiver. So moving into the defense, I feel like overall the defense did win the day, if you will. They had some really nice plays. They had a pick on Russell Wilson that I talked about earlier, and then they had another near pick on Jarrett Stidham. Guys like Zach Allen were flying around in the backfield. So if you guys were keeping score on who won the day, offense versus defense, I definitely feel like today was a defense kind of day. Again, Zach Allen looked like an absolute dog out there. Now, in terms of defensive line, we saw Tyler Lancaster actually go with the first team today and get some first team reps. Tyler Lancaster is a former veteran from the Green Bay Packers who signed with the Las Vegas Raiders in training camp last season and then announced his retirement from the NFL. What's going on, Jess? Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, Tyler Lancaster is trying to make his way back into the NFL, and he was seeing first-team reps at defensive end for the Denver Broncos today. So I thought that was a very interesting note, because Tyler Lancaster was somebody that I almost had written off just because he's a very unknown commodity. But we were anticipating Jonathan Harris or Matt Henningsen getting those first team reps, and I did see Henningsen get some of those reps, and same with Harris, but the guy who ate the lion's share of the first team reps on the D-line today was actually Tyler Lancaster at defensive end alongside Zach Allen. So that's a very interesting note, Broncos country. Keep an eye on Tyler Lancaster. However, given the fact that the team did work out Shelby Harris today, which is absolutely awesome. I've been wanting this to happen for so long. I want the Denver Broncos to just bring in Shelby Harris, please. But if they don't, keep an eye on Tyler Lancaster. Thank you so much, Jess Bail Bonds. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I wouldn't be able to do this without loyal supporters just like you guys. This is my dream job that is a reality, guys, so I cannot begin to express how grateful I am for all of your support. Getting back into it, guys, we did have some guys sitting out today. According to Sean Payton, there are going to be some veteran players who are coming off injuries that are going to be eased into camp, and they're going to see a bit of a reduced snap count. One of the guys who fell into that category is Garrett Bowles, who is coming off of a broken ankle that he suffered last season. Instead of Bowles today at left tackle, it was Christian DeLauro. So Bowles hopefully will be eased in at some point here in camp. I'm really hoping that we didn't have a setback on his injuries. That would be absolutely sucky. And also with right tackle, Mike McGlinchey was out of practice yesterday with a personal matter, and he also was out today with, I'm assuming, that same personal matter. So Isaiah Prince actually got the start at right tackle. So we didn't see Cam Fleming out there either. I don't know if Cam Fleming is on some sort of a veteran snap count, or if guys like Isaiah Prince and Christian DeLauro have beat him out, because Cam Fleming at times last season was our best offensive lineman out there just in terms of consistency. I mean, he looked like a really high-level offensive tackle out there. So I'm very concerned about what's going on with Cam Fleming. I'm hoping it's just a vet rest day for him. And K-Jack as well. Kareem Jackson did have a vet rest day today. Probably he'll be out there when we get back out there tomorrow. But those are a couple of guys who sat out that we do want to keep an eye on here in training camp. All right, guys, I'm just looking over my notes here to make sure that we've covered everything. Okay, so we've got at the cornerback spot, at boundary corner, we've got the primary backup to Pat Surtain right now is Riley Moss. And right now, Damari Mathis is getting the first reps at that second boundary corner spot, and behind him is currently Jaquan McMillan. We signed him as an undrafted free agent last year, and he's somebody that I kind of thought of more so as a nickel, but he's actually getting some reps at boundary corners. So that's an interesting note that I thought of that I thought would be noteworthy here, to see if Jaquan McMillan can continue to carve himself out a role, because if he can, we've got some concerns at boundary corner. If Jaquan McMillan can step up, then I feel like those concerns may have been solved. All right, Broncos country. So, do you guys have any questions for me before we officially dip out of here? I'm still trying to get a ticket for tomorrow's training camp practice. If anybody out there has an extra ticket for tomorrow that they would be willing to share, please DM me on Twitter at Gage Madrid NFL. I continue to check Ticketmaster. That's the only day that I don't have a ticket for. All the other days I'm trying to get a ticket, and all the other days I already have a ticket. So we should be good to go for continuous coverage every single day of training camp here on Denver Broncos Syndicate. I'm so excited that football is back in the Mile High City, guys. Go Broncos! Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Before you dip out of here, be sure to leave a like on the stream. Again, it's a free and easy way to show your support. It helps me out a ton. And be sure to stay tuned, because again, we'll be bringing you continuous coverage throughout several days here on the channel. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.